can we move on straight away to our next speaker? Ben Maynard is the Managing Director of Technology Practice at Burson-Marsteller, and he serves a raft of clients, including Hewlett-Packard, SAP, and Sony Ericsson. He's also Deputy Chair of Burson-Marsteller's Technology Practice in EMEA, Europe, Middle East, and Africa. So, well, we'll just wait for Ben to set up his slide deck. And then...
To play with. Always good. Thank you very much for all coming today, and thank you very much to Olaf and Kurt for a fantastic opening presentation. I learnt a lot from that, and a lot of the numbers there that I think we'll all be digesting. Thank you for the introduction. Obviously, so I'm head of the technology practice. I'm not a technologist. I'm a PR person. I'm a marketer. So I won't be talking about any of the technology involved in making all this happen, and I won't be talking about any of the legals. I'll leave that to John later. But what I do want to talk about today is very much what communications professionals can do with this, and need to start thinking about this new era that's being born. It hardly needs stating, but the internet has had an enormous and profound impact on my profession and the profession of all marketers and communications professionals around the world. It's happened very quickly. I mean, it's happened in the space of my career that suddenly we almost default to using the internet as our way of communicating with all of our audiences, and indeed finding information and sharing information. It's just such a part of our daily job that it actually it's almost inconceivable to think of doing our job without it anymore. And that's only going to change. And I think as the final point of the final slide reiterated, with 2 billion online already and 3 billion online very shortly, and that global population becoming truly global for the first time, it is incumbent on all of us to think about the implications of this and indeed other changes that are happening. So change is important, and we do need to consider it. What I want to do is kind of look at the kind of things that I think are going to happen. And I think the first point is that this is big. Let's not make no mistake about it. This is a really big change. I think from my point of view, it's as big as Google introducing PageRank and what that did for marketers and communications professionals all across all industries. Actually, the sudden influx of a different way of reaching people, and a different way of how your own work and your own efforts were moderated and controlled and led to value being driven through it. So let's bear that in mind. This is an enormous change. I think the other point is that there are lots of opportunities in this. There are also risks, and reputational risks and things that need to be considered. And I think what I want all of you to go away today is thinking this needs to be planned. It's not something that can just happen, and it's not just planning it in terms of the technology, but planning it in terms of what are you going to do with it. If you have one or if you don't have one, there are going to be big questions that need to be asked across your organisation through all sorts of different departments, but particularly in marketing and communications. So let's make sure that we do enough around that. And I think the other big change is that it's possibly the first time that we're going to be really thinking truly globally. I mean, the history of ICANN was a very interesting and salient point there, and a lot of the domains that we use kind of predated anybody actually having a plan. People got a domain and registered it, and if they couldn't get one, they might be trying something else, or they might go to a different jurisdiction. This is the first time. It's kind of like a point in time where actually you can look back at that and start planning it on a truly global basis. So this is a major development. It will have significant reputation factors in terms of doing it and not doing it, and we do need to consider it across the organisation. So what I want to do really now is look at kind of three main areas where I think this consideration should be focused. The first, and I've cleverly called these .global. So the first is, actually, are we ready to think about being truly global in our marketing, in our communications, in our internet presence? And that's not just thinking about being global, but actually acting as a global player. And what does that mean across your organization? Secondly, let's think about the users, so the people who visit our sites, our domains, our content online. Are we really making sure that they are actually getting real value from this new development? To, again, pick up Kurt's point, this is not really about us as brand owners and companies, it's about the people that we serve online. So how do we make sure that we're doing enough that it's a positive, beneficial move for them? And then finally, control. There is a great opportunity to actually take back some of the control. And I'm thinking here in terms of the cyber criminals out there that are making money from the brands that we represent and the companies that we work for. There are things that can and should be done to take some of that control back. I'm slightly concerned I now have global user control written across the screen, which is not the image I wanted to get at all. But they're the three things that I think we do need to talk about. I also want to just spend a little bit of time actually thinking about both sides of this. So if you choose to apply and you're lucky enough to get GTLD in the first wave, what do you do? What are the kind of practical things that you should be doing now? Again, aside from the actual mechanics of applying. But then perhaps more importantly, if you don't get it or if you decide not to do it this time, what should you be doing to prepare to either be defensive or to be more innovative or maybe to get yourself ready to apply next time? So we'll spend a little bit of time on that. So let's look at the first of those. I think for me, when I was kind of preparing this and over the last couple of months working with cloud names in pulling this together, it became very apparent that if you get a GTLD, you're getting far more than a web address. It's, you know, it obviously is it is your place on the internet, but actually what you're getting is the opportunity to own outright and forevermore a word or brand mark or something to associate with your company. Which is an immensely powerful thing when you think about it. To have that enshrined in the rules of ICANN and enshrined in the popular imagination that is created by the internet. So it could be your brand, it could be a company name, it could be something geographic, it could be a sector, it could be something which you've got a brilliant idea of how you're going to market. But it is important that you think about that because it's going to stick there for a very, very long time. And it's going to give you a fantastic opportunity. It will, in effect, become a global brand. So the address and the brand will merge. It'll also give you enormous kudos, I think, anyway. I think those people who go first will be seen as brand leaders just because they've taken this opportunity and they're out there. And that will have an impact on how people view your overall brand. So again, whether you choose a word that is directly resonant of your brand or is something connected to a sector or geography, it is something that people will identify you as being out there in the vanguard of people who are really driving marketing and communications forward. And as I said, I think because the internet is such a big part of that now, I think it will have a direct repercussion over everything. It really establishes you as a global player. It allows you to rise above the CCLDs, the country-level domains. It allows you to be seen to be modern and out there and at the cutting edge. And I think it will give an overall halo to the rest of your organization. I think people will find that is the behavior that they expect from a global leader. Of course, the inverse may possibly also be true. That if you don't do this and you're not seen to be doing it, then people may have a view about what that means as a company, means for you as a company. I think in terms of having got that, there are some kind of key marketing things you need to do. I mean, I think the first is that getting the GTLD is the first step. It's just an address at that point. You need to get behind it, turn it into an opportunity, turn it into something which really establishes you out there. I would suggest that means that actually it's a great opportunity or even a requirement to actually go out and audit all the other things you've got online. So all the other web addresses you have, all the other social media presences, everything, to make sure that you are rationalizing and organizing your web presence behind this single entity to allow you to maximize the use of it. You actually want to have a look and see how diverse your portfolio is. And there may be lots of good reasons why you have a diverse portfolio, and you may want to reflect that through using subdomains and a variety of other tools. But you need to have the conversation about, do you want to rationalize? Do you want to keep the diversity? And the same goes for actually how your websites look and feel. Actually, now you have a global identity, do you want everything to look the same? Or do you want to have specific regional variations or service variations or product variations? You need to have a look at all of that and start now beginning to organize behind that single domain. You also want to remember that obviously the worlds of online and offline marketing are, they're fairly meaningless differentiations now. What you do online will affect offline, and offline will affect online. So you want to think about rationalizing your whole marketing program behind the domain. It will my guess is that very quickly it will become indistinguishable from your brand. So you need to think about how your brand is reflected in offline communications as well, to make sure that people are directed back and you get the kind of resonance and the kind of multiplier effect, I suppose, of having the online. So, is the brand domain, as already noticed, is far more than an address. Do you really want to start making it your brand in entirety? So rather than just having it tacked on to the end of an advert or end of a press release as a signpost to more information, do you actually want to bring it up front and center and actually make it the message itself? Interestingly, looking at e-commerce, McKinsey have done a report relatively recently about how internet shopping is changing, and it's apparent from that research that people are becoming more and more aligned to going to a brand site online than before, whereas kind of early stage internet shopping was comparison, finding cheap, finding convenient, whereas now people are being dragged into that brand. So the idea of combining offline and online brands into a single reference point that will capture that makes a lot of sense. We've talked a little bit about being global and local. I think, again, the thing you need to consider in this is to what extent do you want to do that. There are lots of reasons in terms of culture, language, etc., that you want to keep separate, but you need to think about how you organize that internally. I think the most important thing is that you need clarity and simplicity across all of your marketing so that you're not confusing the user and that you are directing people to the place they want to go. And that's very much what I want to come across in this next bit, really thinking about the users. And I think, again, when I was researching this a couple of months ago, the thing that took a while to occur to me is that obviously you're not only buying what's after the dot, but by owning the domain, you have control over everything in front of the dot as well, which gives you enormous opportunity to do all sorts of clever things. It also gives you opportunity to make a real mess of it by adding too many complexities and too many different choices. So I think that's again something you need to consider. Actually view this through the user's perspective. What is the visitor journey as they come and look at your content online? You need to be always thinking, how do I make things simpler for the user rather than more complicated from the user? We've already talked about CC TLDs. So you could use this to rationalize all of your country domains. You could do it by language. So you could have Spain.brand or Spanish.brand to help users understand where they need to be in the space. You could also do it by theme. You could imagine a world in which the BBC might want to buy .bbc and then arrange its content by news.bbc or sport.bbc or drama.bbc. So they are able to rationalize down around the sorts of things they would expect their customers to want to find when they come. And that's, again, the kind of message here is always do it based on the data that you have about what your customers want to do when they are coming to find you online, and being able to do that in a way that makes sense to them. Now, obviously, in these days, transparency and consistency are crucial. So you want to make sure that a user, just because you've channeled them through a certain way, because you think that's how they want to find you, they should still find nothing that contradicts that if they decide to go through a different route. Now, this could be very important if you're talking cultural aspects. If you're a global brand and you play in a number of different regions where cultural expectations about the sort of content you may want or indeed be allowed to share, you need to make sure that those are respected across. So I can't just presume that people will come and use my domain in the way I expect them to use it. They may come through other routes. So that consistency is very important. There's also a lot you can do to just help people find things. So I was looking for a camping compass on Argos. So Argos is a big retailer in the UK. And if you want to find a compass on Argos, the web address for it is www.argos.co.uk/static/product/part number/9285515/category/sports++leisure plus some other numbers plus camping plus accessories.htm. So that's not a very easy thing for me to share with anybody. Say, oh, actually, I found a compass, look at this. Actually, the ability to have compass.argos or bookcase.ikea or bedsheets.debenhams is an immensely powerful way of actually organising your catalogue of products in a way that makes sense and uses real language that consumers will be able to find and importantly share, because I think that's the other big change that we've seen in the way we use the internet, in that it's not just me going and finding something and buying it, it's actually me going and finding something and sharing it with my wife or a friend and say, hey, look at this, you know, the whole kind of Groupon part of that kind of social buying is an important part. So the more you can make things relevant and easy to find, the better. An interesting angle to this is the whole idea of personalization. Again, it's a huge trend in marketing. How do you make marketing targeted to an audience of one? How do you really segment it down so you're giving everybody something which means something for you? Because with your own top-level domain, you effectively have really unlimited number of subdomains. You can personalize to an enormous extent. And there are lots and lots of different options, lots of innovations that could provide, giving people their own homepages, allowing partners to have pages on your domain, allowing internet addresses to email addresses to work off your domain. So you could, again, theoretically, and you know, I haven't spoken to anybody about this, but you know, Ford could theoretically allow me to have a page for my car that would have my service history, special offers, other useful information. Could all be arranged around the number plate .Ford. So you know, CN52ZDM.Ford would be my page on Ford where I can manage my car. So there's all sorts of innovation that you can do there to really personalize things down to individuals. And it also goes for specific campaigns. I mean, one of the you know, daily trials that we have working with our brands is, you know, we'll come up with a campaign, we'll want to set up a microsite or a website to deal with it, trying to find a domain that's free, i.e. not used, to put our campaign on is very hard. But obviously, if you own your own domain, you can drop it in, and then that allows you to have nice, simple domain names, not hugely long, complex, fairly esoteric names, because that's all you could get. So that allows you, again, to keep control over everything. So you could argue that Olympics.McDonald's would be a logical place for McDonald's to put all of its Olympic-related campaigns over the next few months. There is a question in the back of all of this, which is what about search? Because obviously most of our consumers are going to find stuff through search, at least the first time. And there's been quite a lot written, quite a lot of debate around will the GTLDs help search or not? And I think the honest answer is nobody really knows currently. Google et al. Are very, very keen to keep their algorithms very close to their chest, and so nobody really knows how they will react to these sort of things. However, I think if you think about the way that most search works, which is about relevance, if you've chosen your domain name well and you choose your subdomains well and you populate the pages you put on those with relevant information, theoretically it should make it easier to find your content on a regular keyword search. Particularly if you choose things in light of keywords. And obviously the advantage of having a domain is you see all the traffic coming, so you can understand how people came, so you get better insight into the words that they use, so therefore you can set up other subdomains that respond to that traffic. So that will ultimately give you a much closer relationship with the user. And then the final point I've already alluded to is actually because you can choose sensible subdomain names and short and easy to remember subdomain names, that will actually help because people will type them in better, so they won't end up somewhere where they didn't think they were going to be. They will remember them better, and importantly, they'll be able to share them better. So none of this bit.ly shortening. You can send the full domain, the full address as a tweet, or share it on Facebook as a whole domain. So that makes it a lot easier and gives it a lot more memorability to your work and makes it much easier for users to navigate. So the control element, obviously there's been a lot of talk about security, online thefts, cyber squatting, phishing, all those sort of ways of effectively conning your users into going somewhere else other than your site and putting in data or otherwise purchasing products perhaps that aren't the official products that you're trying to sell. Obviously, having a domain does give you more control. You can effectively say, unless it's .barclays, it won't be from Barclays Bank. So you can stop people capturing unknown domains and using to appear to be like Barclays. You can also enforce the security over the domain, and that's a bit more of a technical issue, which I'm not going to get into. But there are things that you can do there. However, I think the important thing to realize is that all of that requires communication, and a lot of it, because effectively you're endeavoring to change users' behavior. So those people who currently bank with Barclays will be quite used to typing in barclays.co.uk and will do so by default. So you need to work very, very hard to communicate to them that .barclays is actually the new place to go. And that if they get emails or requests or redirects to pages which are not .barclays, that is the warning sign for them. So that's an enormous part of it. I think having one does obviously show that you've been through the vetting procedure, so that ICANN has given you a stamp of approval in one way or another. So that helps. That shows that just by not having .com or .co.uk, you actually have your own GTLD. That is a kind of a badge of authenticity. But you still need to do the campaigning around that, the education, and you still need to make sure that your marketing, all your marketing, online and offline, is very, very clear. Another paper on the website showed a recent survey shows that 67% of people actually typing in what they feel is the address that they want to go to still end up at a different place than what they thought they were going to. So there's that clarity is absolutely important. But everything that makes it simpler and more clear is going to help with that control and general trust. I mean, I think control is the kind of the word from an IT perspective, but once we get into the domain of marketing and communications, it's very much trust, and it's building that bond of trust with your visitors, with your organisations, audiences, whoever they may be, that there is this level of trust that exists between you, and having your own GTLD is, I think, an important brick in that wall. So if you do decide to apply, I think there are kind of 5 things I would start thinking about in terms of the marketing of it. The first is that, this is the opportunity and the imperative to think and act globally. So everything that you look at, from the way that your websites are set out, from the way your brand is, the look and feel of your brand, from the way that your content is portrayed, and indeed the content itself, are you sure that that is truly global in its outlook, and is it sensitive and meaningful to all those audiences you're going to reach? And that is a big job, because I imagine, we had a quick poll, I imagine most people would find it struggle to actually find all the content they had online anyway. So just finding it in the first place and then deciding whether it fits is a big job. And then obviously that anything you create from now onwards needs to be done with a global mindset. So really start thinking about that. That obviously needs to be cascaded down into the kind of second point, which is very much thinking about the balance between a global strategy and a local implementation. How to become global without becoming bland. How to make sure that you're still touching all the local hot buttons that you need to touch to get people to visit, interact, share with you in whatever ways you want them to, does mean that you need to walk this very fine line, becoming too anodyne and meaningless to be engaging and interesting to your local audiences. So make sure that that happens. You need to make sure that the initial investment is supported. This is a long-term play. You'll have this name forever. So you need to make sure that you're investing in it in that way, and you're putting enough behind it. You need to think about, actually, do you really want to actually use this as a way of relaunching the whole business? Is this a kind of marketing, day zero, where you're actually kicking everything off? Just getting the GTLD in the first place is the first step. Now you've got to think about, how do we actually make this enough of investment that we repay that initial outgoing. I've already said, I think you need to think about this as not just online. So how does the offline world reflect this? Do we want those messages to become key in all of your communications? How do you refresh the whole portfolio? Everything from business cards and email addresses through to 24-sheet posters, TV advertising, online. It's all got to be part of it. And this has got to be not just a kind of a leave behind, but actually a consistent part of it. I think that was 5. If you don't, or you're unlucky not to, I think you also need to think about what this means. Now, practically, obviously, we've talked about the numbers. That means there are an awful lot of people out there are not going to have their own GTLD. And it may be that you are among those who don't, either by choice or by not getting through. So I think the first thing you need to do is look out for the list when it comes out in May. See who's got them. Because that will have a number of things that will have a very kind of urgent impact on your business. First of all, have any of your competitors got a .brand domain? So if you're Coke and you haven't, and Pepsi has, that's going to be a big barrier for you for the next year or however long until the next session opens up, because you're going to have to defensively market against .Pepsi, who will have all of those halo effects that we talked about to start with. You also need to think about the kind of reputational issues. As we've said, those that do probably will be seen as the go-ahead brands and as the leaders and as the globally significant players. If you're not one of them, then what's the reputational impact for you? Are you seen as a bit yesterday's brand? Are you seen as a bit parochial, a bit old-fashioned? So you've got to start considering, okay, how do I start countering some of those things for the short, medium term, or possibly forever? You may decide that actually we don't want to have a GTLD for whatever reasons, but if you do, then you need to think about how you overcome these slightly negative things. Then the next thing I would check is, are there sector or geographic GTLDs that you should know about? So is there .shop? Is there .car? If you're Ford, or if you're Selfridges, or if you're Ford, how's that going to impact you? Do you need to go to those domain owners and register yourself? So does Ford want to buy Ford.car from whoever owns .car? Does Selfridges want to buy Selfridges.shop from whoever owns .shop? Now, obviously, those guys are kind of set those up to do that. So one would hope that those doors are relatively open. But you need to get out there and start. Same with geographic. I mean, we're pretty sure that somebody will apply for .London. You know, we know people have been talking about it, and that will be a very powerful brand for anybody that's living or doing business in London. So if you're a theatre in London, or if you're a Starbucks, do you want to go and do Starbucks.London? Does that mean you also have to do Starbucks.NYC and .Buenos Aires and .Cape Town? So that has a big a big impact on how you're going to market throughout the rest of time really, as that carries on. If you're going to do that, do you want to think about, do you still need starbucks.co.uk? Or can you drop that and go to starbucks.london or whatever? So there are all sorts of implications just by looking at that list. I think that will only be the first pass, because once you've seen that list, then you may change your mind about the decisions you made in the first round. So you may then start to think, okay, maybe we should be going down the track to own ours in the second round or third round, or it may be becoming an imperative. So I think that's, to me, is the biggest piece of advice, is keep your eye on the market. Things are going to be changing. As we've said, this is probably the biggest change, perhaps in the internet, since internet and marketing kind of got together. So keep your eye on it, see what domains are out there, and also see how successful they are. See who is buying underneath .London, second level of underneath .London, and make up your mind about that. Whatever happens, I think the one thing that we can all be sure of is this does mean a lot of change. And that does mean that all of us are going to have to examine what we're doing now and really, really think about, is it the right thing to be doing going forward? And if not, what are the changes that we need to make now in order to keep up with that? So thank you very much for your attention. If there are any questions, I'll ask them, or we'll do the panel later.
Thank you very much, Ben. I think